This is a balaclava. You can wear it with minimal face exposure, or adjust it so you can talk or eat, or you could even stuff the bottom into the top and wear it as a hat.
Hey everybody, it's me, Margaret, and I'm here with another Addi tutorial, and yes, this can be done on any circular machine as long as it fits your recipient. You just need to understand the basic construction, and then you can adjust it to fit your machine and your recipient accordingly. And I'm going to show you that in this video. While the concept of this thing is very simple, you do need to have some hand knitting or crochet skills, because you have to use that to do this super stretchy bind off here around the face opening and around the neck. Now I'm going to show you both with knitting needles and with a crochet hook down here, and either technique can be applied in both places. Now, a word about yarn choice. The Addi machine is not one where you can adjust the gauge. It's a fixed gauge, and it's designed for worsted weight yarn, number 4, we call it in America. But even number 4 worsteds come in varied weights. I chose lighter weight yarns for mine. This is Caron Simply Soft. This was Lion Brand 1 Pound of Love or something like that. Anyway, I was purposely choosing lighter weights because I could get more stretch, more horizontal stretch that way for a looser fit. If you want a tighter fit, you would choose a thicker worsted weight yarn. And this is simple enough that you can kind of practice, do a few trial caps to fit your recipient and or just see what it feels like on your own head, by knitting from crown to just below the ear. You can see where this opening is right here. So just whip out some. This is 50 rows right here that I did on Caron Simply Soft. Probably is a little long because if you pull it up for the face you get this, but that doesn't, it didn't matter to me, might matter to you, and that's why you might want to do a trial to just see how many rows you need. And once you figure out that formula, that's how many rows you'll need from here down to the end. So let's get started. Okay, the start is simple enough, just a basic cast on every other peg. I always start with the first black peg. And then I always hold it to get started, and we want to do 50 rows. Now know that 50 is just a guideline because it depends on what yarn you're using. Alright, I've completed my initial 50 rows. Basically this is going to be how long you want it from crown to covered ear. So that depends upon your size, your yarn choice, and your tension, and all the things we know go hand in hand with sizing on the Addi. Alright, now what we're about to do next is this. This is my sample. We've completed 50 rows, which is from here to here, and we need to make this opening. Now basically what we're going to do is just keep knitting the tube, so we're going to insert a placeholder right here for this. Now the reason this curls is because we're working with stockinette, so even though we bound it off, it's still going to curl right here, but that won't matter because when you put it on, it's going to stretch and it'll hold flat like you saw in the picture. Now before we insert our holding yarn, we're going to cut off this yarn, but I don't want to add the yarn in when I begin binding off. I'd like to just use the yarn that's already attached so I don't have to worry about knotting or not to knot or whatever. Now I don't like to do anything exact, so what I do is I'm going to measure around here approximately 1 time. That's roughly a yard, by the way. So give yourself about, I'm guessing about 4 yards, and cut it off. So after you've cut it off, you got to do something with all this yarn that you've just pulled off. Now when we begin to do the bind off, we're going to want it on the outside of the work. However, that's a pain in the neck when you're trying to do the Addi. It'll be going around and around and around, getting caught on everything. So what I like to do is to make, see, it already got caught on my handle, is to make a mini skein, which is basically get yourself a tail of about 6 inches or more and wind it back and forth like this. We're just getting it out of the way. And of course, this is not mandatory. Oh look, I made a knot. I'm sharing this little tip with you just because it's what works for me. You may come up with a better one, in which case write it in the comments below, so share it with me. Alright, I take a crochet hook and I slide it underneath and pull that last little tab through, and then unhook and throw it in the center. And now we need the waste yarn in a contrasting color just because it's easier to see. Now I try my hardest to start everything with the first black needle that comes around. What we're going to do is put waste yarn on 16 of these needles.
This is done just like changing colors, so remember, if you need help with the basics, check the description box below.
Don't want to miss the second needle. There we go. Okay, so that's 1 is the first black needle, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm counting them as they catch it and go down. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16, again, is what works for me. You might need to measure across and see how large you want your opening to be. Okay, just for the sake of this video, I'm going to cut this and get it out of the way. But oftentimes I try to save it, and I use the same method as I showed you before with the mini skein. Alright, now we add back from the main ball of yarn the main color. And this technique is the same as you would anytime you were changing color on the Addi. Make sure it catches.
When adding waste yarn, tying is optional since you'll be removing it later. I like to tie it just once, just to keep the tension even.
And we're going to go, let's see, this would be completing row 51. That's technically row 51, but I will do another 50-ish rows for the neck. And basically this is going to be from the ear down to the neck. Be very careful when you come to the waste yarn. Be very careful the first couple of times when you come to the ends, and then you can proceed as normal for approximately 50 rows. Okay, so I finished my second set of 50. That would be from the ear down. I'm going to cut my main yarn, and this time I'm going to attach some waste yarn because we're going to pick up some stitches. What happened here? We're going to pick up some stitches, and the easiest way to do that is from the waste yarn. And just how many rows do you do for waste yarn? Well, I don't know. That's up to you. I like 4 or 5, something like that. I want it to maintain its tension, but that's just me.
The waste yarn I was using was a bit too short, and I didn't get the full 4 or 5 rows that I like. You'll see the loosey-goosey tension in a minute, and it made picking up the stitches a little bit trickier for me. My favorite part about ending a project with waste yarn is how easy it is to remove it from the machine. Just release it and crank around twice. Voila! Ready to go!
While the concept of this thing is very simple, you do need to have some hand knitting or crochet skills because you have to use that to do this super stretchy bind off here around the face opening and around the neck. Now I'm going to show you both with knitting needles and with a crochet hook down here, and either technique can be applied in both places. Alright, so here we have the finished product. We've got, this is the part that we cast on with. That's going to be the top of the hat. We're going to gather it. We have this piece of extra yarn that we saved coming from the center. And then of course our line here we created, and this is our cast off edge down here. So the first thing I'm going to do is reach in here and grab that yarn, this yarn, and see where it's coming from. Right here. So I'm going to come back around. I want to pull it out to the front because that's how we have to do it. I'm going to catch it with the crochet hook. I'm going to pull it through to the front. Okay, and that's going to mean that I need to unhook this, untie this little mini skein that we made, so I can pull this all the way through. Now, knitters, basically what we're going to do is pick up these stitches and do a super stretchy bind off of your choice. I use Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off.
You'll need to snug up your waist yarn if it's gotten loose on the edges. Just reach inside and pull a little bit.
I'm going to do the magic loop method for this, so you'll have to apply whatever method you use. But I'm using 6mm needles because I'm generally a loose knitter. I feel like that's what I'm going to need for this loose gauge anyway. So we'll see how that goes. But usually when I knit in ready position, you've got the yarn coming from this side right here. So right now my yarn's over here, so I'm going to turn my work like that. Now, alright, so I need to pick up my stitches, and that means pick up the right leg of each one. But I heard a trick. In order to keep this from gapping, go one stitch over. So here's a stitch right here. See how the waste yarn is funneling down into the top of this stitch right here. Okay, so that's how you know that that's the stitch you want, and you won't get confused and call it half of another. It's the one where both legs of the waste yarn funnel down in. So the trick that I heard is to actually come back over here and catch that stitch, the right leg of the previous stitch. And then you just proceed all the way across. Now, that would be my last stitch, and the tip that I heard says do not, even though it looks like it's gapping, don't pick it up here. We're going to add it in at the top of that one. So we pull the circular needle through, and then we go this way. Here is the stitch, and this time it's the yarn we want to pick up. It's standing inside the waste yarn. You see it? So it would be this one over here. I need to turn my work around upside down because I'm right-handed and I find it difficult to pick up with my left hand. So looking at it from this direction, this is the stitch we need to pick up, but using our trick, we're going to go over one stitch. So I'll put this marker so you can see. This is the first stitch we need to pick up right there, the full stitch. But the trick is to go to the next stitch. So I'll pick up both of those legs. We see two stitches, right? So we want to pick up the right leg of these stitches. So we pick up that one, and then we go to this one. Whoops, I split it, didn't I? Get off of there. And then we proceed as normal, picking up the right leg of the stitch where the waste yarn appears to be standing in the center. The last one that has waste yarn in it. Okay, now pull the needles like that, flip it around to ready position, and now we're ready to begin magic loop. Alright, here is one thing I want to caution you to be aware. I normally pull from the back when I do magic loop, but in this case the yarn is coming from the front, so I'm going to pull from the front and knit across the back. Now some people like to take their yarn out at this point. I guess it doesn't make any difference one way or the other. I did yesterday. I'm going to leave it in today and see how that goes. Okay, I just noticed something. I picked this up, but I've got my yarn coming in between the stitch. So what I need to do is pull it out. Now I'll go back and pick up this leg and put it right there. Okay. I think the yarn is coming from the bottom one. I don't know, but I don't think it's going to make any difference with the trick. I guess we'll use me as a guinea pig and find out, won't we? Where the yarn is coming from, top needle or bottom needle, is important.
See this ugly little gap right here? That's what did it.
Now the first time I did this hat, it came from the top needle right here, and I didn't have the gaps on the side. The second time I did this hat is the tutorial you're seeing, and it was coming from the bottom. So I think it depends upon which row you end up picking up. This is a swatch, and it is coming from the top needle up here. So be aware, whichever one the yarn is coming from, that's the needle you will pull and work on the other one. So if your yarn is coming from this needle, pull this needle and work on this one, and that will help you prevent gaps, along with the little trick about picking up the leg from the other stitch. Good. I'm going to knit the first one. See, it's a regular knit stitch. And then do Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy Bind Off, which you may be familiar with. You wrap the yarn around the opposite direction. You knit. And then you pull over these two loops right here. You may have to pull them over one at a time if that's all you can do. Just get the job done. Some people actually teach it one at a time.
Link to a proper tutorial for this Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy Bind Off will be in the description box below.
Just be very careful not to lose your stitch. Wrap it opposite, knit as usual, and then you then proceed to pass over both loops. And of course I would pick easy to split yarn for this demonstration, wouldn't I? And you can see how it's binding off right there. Alright, so I finally made it to my last stitch here. I'm going to pull this top needle like that and spin my work. And I'll pick up my work like I had it before. I'm going to keep that stitch there. And then I'll proceed as I did before. Wrap to me, knit as usual,
and continue your stretchy bind off until you get to the other end.
Okay, so I finished. I have a little tension issue right there at that great big old stitch. But you know what? I never claimed to be perfect. I'm going to cut my yarn, pull it through, and then I'm going to sew my ends in and remove my waste yarn. I think you can handle that. Right, I glossed over this sewing in the ends. Sewing in the ends is very simple, but look right here. You've got this gap. When I pulled the yarn through, there's the completed stitch. See how that connects over there? I would like to come around this one. Don't go back out the same way, but and now I've kind of joined the corners so that it closes that up.
Remember that I pulled from the wrong needle when I knit this, so my gap was probably larger than yours. I should have picked up more underneath that join right there, but I didn't.
You know, it doesn't matter. Just fix that so it looks like it's closed. And then go and sew your ends in. Now, what if you don't knit? Let's do a super stretchy bind off with a crochet hook on the bottom. Now, here's the deal.
Oops! I dropped a stitch, so I just pulled the working yarn through it to hold it in place till I was ready to begin.
And that'll hold it. Let's talk about crochet for a minute. So this is what it ends up looking like, and you do have some spaces there, but it does catch your edges. It does have lots of stretch, which is what you need. And when you put it on, it's going to roll up anyway, and so you're not going to see those spaces. You're not going to see those spaces. They're just going to roll up like that. So it's really a non-issue. I like to use a 6mm crochet hook as well because it gives me a looser weave. It's not what you would normally use on number 4 worsted weight yarn, especially not a lighter number 4 as this Caron Simply Soft is. But it just gives me a better, looser weave, and that's what I want, so it'll remain nice and stretchy. I'm going to pull that back out now that I'm getting ready to go to work. And I'm going to put my hook in that loop. From this direction, you can pick up your stitches just as we did with those knit stitches when you're crocheting. But it's also easier if you do it through the back. So if you just let it roll over, get that waste yarn out of the way, you can see your stitch right there. That's the one you need to pick up. So yarn over. Find the next blue stitch that's secured by the waste yarn. Pull through all 3. Yarn over. Wait, did I do that right? Pick up that, yarn over, and pull through all 3. Yarn over. And there's your next blue stitch. Secured by the waste yarn, yarn over, pull through all 3. Yarn over, all you're doing is half double crochet, picking up the next blue secured by the waste yarn, yarn over, and pull through all 3, completing your half double crochet. And so you'll still have the nice stretchy bind off on that. Now, I foolishly told you to cut this yarn. So now I'm going to have to add some yarn in to complete my round, but
if I had more sense than a billy goat, I would have told you do it this way instead. Release the yarn feeder and put your working yarn down the center of your work. Then attach your waste yarn and go around from there. Then you wouldn't have to knot it later.
Okay, when you get back to the beginning, you can see that this is where this column right here is where the first stitch was, and I have completed that one right there. So just as we would with any crochet project, I'll join to the top of the first stitch with a slip stitch. Okay, and then you can remove all your waste yarn. Well, let's go ahead and cut this. Pull it through and remove this waste yarn. Where's the pulling end? Oh, here it is. And because you used it on the cast off edge, it's very simple to remove and reuse your yarn, unless you get it twisted up like I did. So now we'll just sew this in as we normally would any crochet project. So here's the finished edge, and it looks pretty good. finished crochet edge, and you can use this same stitch for the mouth opening up here if you're not comfortable with knitting. So keep that in mind. But there you go. Now the last thing you need to do is something you're probably very familiar with, and that is to gather the top of the hat for just as you would any Addi hat. Close the opening as well as you can, as small as you can, and then you'll sew your ends in as usual.
Look, I thought I was being a sneaky sneaker and hiding this unsewn end, but you caught me. Leave me any questions in the comment box and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching. Bye.